The Cleveland Browns just lost their best coach. Not the head coach, not the offensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, the man who built one of the NFL's most feared defenses, just walked away. And he didn't get fired. He didn't get poached by another team. He resigned, quit, walked out the door. And when Jimmy Haslam was asked about it, his reaction exposed something massive that's been brewing inside the Browns organization for weeks. This isn't just about one coach leaving. This is about the Todd Monken hire unraveling in real time, about a power struggle that's tearing the franchise apart, and about a decision that might have just cost Cleveland their best chance at winning in decades. What Haslam said in that press conference changes everything we thought we knew about this coaching staff. Before we expose the full story behind Schwartz's shocking resignation and what it reveals about the Browns' dysfunction, smash that subscribe button because this goes way deeper than anyone is reporting. Let me take you inside the Cleveland Browns building, because what just happened isn't simply a coaching departure. It's an earthquake that's exposed fault lines in the organization that nobody saw coming, and the aftershocks are going to be felt for years.
It's February 18th, 2025. The Cleveland Browns just hired Todd Monken as their new head coach less than 2 weeks ago. The press conference went well. Monken laid out his vision for the offense, talked about maximizing Deshaun Watson or developing a rookie quarterback, promised an aggressive modern scheme that would finally unlock Cleveland's offensive potential. The fan base was cautiously optimistic. The media praised the hire as a smart, stability-focused move. But while everyone was focused on the offensive side of the ball, something was brewing on defense, and it was about to explode. Jim Schwartz has been the Browns' defensive coordinator since 2023. Before that, he was the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, where he built one of the most dominant defenses in football. Before Philly, he was the head coach of the Detroit Lions from 1909 to 2013. He's been coaching in the NFL since 2001. He's old school, tough, demanding, and incredibly effective. When Schwartz arrived in Cleveland in 2023, the defense was mediocre, inconsistent, and lacking identity. Within one season, he transformed it. The Browns' defense became a top 5 unit in the NFL. They led the league in sacks. They were dominant against the run. Myles Garrett, already a star, reached another level under Schwartz's coaching and won Defensive Player of the Year. Denzel Ward became one of the best corners in football. The defensive line was terrorizing quarterbacks every week. In 2024, despite the offense struggling and Deshaun Watson's injuries derailing the season, the Browns' defense kept them competitive in nearly every game. They held elite offenses to low point totals. They created turnovers. They were the reason Cleveland even had a chance in most of their losses. Jim Schwartz was not just a good defensive coordinator, he was elite. He was arguably the best assistant coach on the Browns' entire staff, and everyone knew it. When Kevin Stefanski was fired and the Browns started their head coaching search, there were whispers that Schwartz could be a candidate. He had head coaching experience from Detroit. He had proven he could build a dominant unit. He commanded respect in the locker room.
But the Browns went in a different direction. They hired Todd Monken, an offensive coordinator with no head coaching experience, no track record of running an entire organization, and a much younger, less proven resume than Schwartz. At the time, nobody thought much of it. Schwartz was a defensive guy. The Browns needed offensive help. Monken made sense. And besides, Schwartz had a great job as defensive coordinator. Why would he leave? But then the details started leaking. According to multiple sources inside the Browns organization, when Todd Monken was hired, one of his first priorities was assembling his coaching staff. For the offensive side, that was straightforward. He brought in guys he trusted, coordinators and position coaches who understood his system. But for the defensive side, things got complicated. Monken had to decide, keep Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator or bring in his own guy.
Now, in most organizations, this would be an easy call. You keep the elite defensive coordinator who just built a top-5 defense and won you games. You don't mess with success. You let him do his job while you focus on fixing the offense. But that's not what happened. Reports started circulating in mid-February that there was tension between Monken and Schwartz. The two coaches had very different philosophies, very different personalities, very different approaches to the game. Schwartz is old school, intense, confrontational. Monken is more modern, collaborative, player-friendly. Schwartz demands discipline and physicality. Monken emphasizes creativity and scheme. According to sources, the two men had several meetings during the transition period, and those meetings did not go well. Schwartz reportedly wanted assurances that he'd have full autonomy over the defense, that Monken wouldn't meddle in his game plans or personnel decisions, that he'd be allowed to coach his side of the ball without interference. He'd been burned before in Detroit when ownership and front office executives undermined his authority, and he wasn't going to let it happen again. Monken, on the other hand, wanted to build a cohesive coaching staff with a unified vision. He wanted collaboration, not silos. He wanted all the coordinators working together, sharing ideas, being on the same page philosophically. And he made it clear that as head coach, he'd have input on all 3 phases of the game, including defense. This created a fundamental conflict. Schwartz felt like his autonomy was being threatened. Monken felt like Schwartz was being unreasonable and resistant to collaboration. The tension escalated. More meetings happened. The Browns' front office, led by General Manager Andrew Berry, tried to mediate. They didn't want to lose Schwartz. They knew how valuable he was, but they also didn't want to undermine their new head coach before he even coached a game.
Then, on February 17th, everything fell apart. According to multiple NFL insiders with direct knowledge of the situation, Jim Schwartz walked into a meeting with Todd Monken, Andrew Berry, and Jimmy Haslam. The purpose of the meeting was to hash out the final details of the coaching structure, to clarify roles and responsibilities, to make sure everyone was on the same page before the off-season program began. But instead of reaching an agreement, the meeting ended in disaster. Sources say Schwartz laid out his position clearly. He wanted full control of the defense with no interference from Monken. He wanted the ability to hire and fire his own assistants without approval. He wanted his defensive game plans to be final without being second-guessed. Essentially, he wanted to operate as a head coach for the defensive side of the ball. Monken pushed back. He said that's not how modern NFL organizations work, that the head coach needs to be involved in all 3 phases, that collaboration makes the team stronger. The conversation became heated. Voices were raised, and according to sources, at one point Schwartz stood up and said something to the effect of, "If that's how this is going to work, I'm not interested." And then he walked out. Within hours, Jim Schwartz submitted his formal resignation to the Cleveland Browns. No 2-week notice, no farewell press conference, just a resignation letter and a statement through his agent thanking the organization and the players, but saying it was time to move on. The news broke on February 18th, and the NFL world was stunned. Jim Schwartz, one of the best defensive coordinators in football, just resigned from a team with a top-5 defense, elite talent, and championship aspirations. He didn't leave for a head coaching job. He didn't leave for more money. He just left. Social media exploded. Browns fans were devastated. The hashtag #FireMonken started trending before Monken had even coached a single game. Analysts questioned whether the Browns had just made a catastrophic mistake by allowing Schwartz to walk over a power struggle. And then Jimmy Haslam stepped to the microphone.
The Browns scheduled an emergency press conference for that afternoon. Haslam, flanked by Andrew Berry and Todd Monken, addressed the media, and what he said was absolutely shocking. Haslam started by acknowledging Schwartz's resignation and thanking him for his contributions to the Browns' defense, standard corporate speak. But then he was asked the question everyone wanted answered. Did the Browns try to keep Jim Schwartz? And if so, what went wrong? Haslam paused. You could see him calculating how much to reveal. And then he said something that exposed the entire situation. We absolutely wanted Jim to stay. Jim is an excellent coach, but at the end of the day, we needed to support our head coach and the organizational structure we believe will lead to sustained success. Todd has a vision for how this team should operate, and we're committed to empowering him to implement that vision. We tried to find middle ground with Jim, but unfortunately we couldn't reach an agreement that satisfied everyone. Translation: Monken and Schwartz clashed. The Browns chose Monken. Schwartz walked. The follow-up questions came fast. So you're saying Monken wanted changes to how Schwartz ran the defense? Did Monken give Schwartz an ultimatum? Are you concerned about losing your best coach over a philosophical disagreement? Haslam deflected most of them, but Monken was forced to speak, and what he said made things worse. Monken explained that he believes in collaboration, that great organizations have coaches who work together rather than in isolation, that he wasn't trying to micromanage the defense, but wanted to ensure alignment across all three phases. But here's the problem with that answer. It confirmed that Monken was planning to have significant input on the defense, which is exactly what Schwartz didn't want. The press conference ended, but the fallout was just beginning. NFL analysts immediately started dissecting the decision. On ESPN, multiple former coaches and executives questioned the Browns' priorities. Dan Orlovsky went on air and said, "You just lost one of the best defensive coordinators in football because your first-time head coach wants more control. That's backwards. You should be empowering your elite coordinator and letting your unproven head coach focus on what he knows, which is offense." On FS1, Shannon Sharpe was even more blunt. He said the Browns just proved once again that they don't know how to build a winning organization, that they're prioritizing the wrong things, and that losing Schwartz could set the defense back years. Former NFL executives pointed out that Schwartz's defenses have consistently been elite wherever he's coached. Losing him isn't just losing a coordinator, it's losing a proven winner, a guy who elevates everyone around him, a coach whose star players want to play for. And speaking of star players, the reaction from Browns defenders was telling. Myles Garrett, the Defensive Player of the Year, who credits Schwartz with taking his game to another level, posted a cryptic message on social media. Just 3 words: hate to see it. No elaboration, no explanation, but the message was clear. Garrett was not happy about Schwartz leaving. Other defensive players, speaking anonymously to reporters, expressed frustration and confusion. One player told The Athletic, "Coach Schwartz is the reason we had a top 5 defense. He's the reason guys wanted to come here and play defense. Losing him is a massive blow, and I don't understand how it happened." The locker room was rattled, and the season hadn't even started yet. Meanwhile, the broader NFL community started connecting dots that made the Browns look even worse. Remember, just 2 weeks ago, Jimmy Haslam stood at a press conference and said Todd Monken was always Plan A for the head coaching job. He praised Monken's leadership, his vision, his ability to build a winning culture. But now, 2 weeks later, Monken's leadership has driven away the best assistant coach in the building. His vision has created a power struggle that cost the Browns a top-tier coordinator, and his ability to build a winning culture is being questioned before he's even held his first team meeting. The narrative shifted immediately. What was initially praised as a smart, stable hire now looked like a potential disaster. Monken's lack of head coaching experience was being questioned, his ability to manage strong personalities was being doubted, and his decision to assert control over the defense at the expense of keeping Schwartz was being called a catastrophic misjudgment. But here's where the story gets even more complicated, because there are 2 sides to this, and the Schwartz situation isn't as simple as Monken bad, Schwartz good. Some analysts defended Monken's position. They argued that a head coach has to be able to lead the entire organization, not just one side of the ball. They pointed out that if Schwartz was demanding complete autonomy with zero input from the head coach, that's unreasonable and unsustainable.
Bill Belichick operated that way in New England, controlling everything, but he'd earned that through decades of success. Jim Schwartz, for all his defensive prowess, went 29-51 as a head coach in Detroit. He doesn't have the resume to demand Belichick-level autonomy. Other coaches who've worked with Schwartz confirmed that he can be difficult, stubborn, and resistant to collaboration. He's old school in a league that's moving toward more integrated, collaborative coaching structures. So maybe, some argued, the Browns made the right call. Maybe they prioritized long-term organizational structure over short-term defensive success. Maybe empowering their head coach to build the culture he wants is more important than keeping one coordinator, no matter how good he is. But even those who defended the decision acknowledged the risk. You don't just replace Jim Schwartz easily. The Browns now have to find a new defensive coordinator, install a new system, hope the players adapt, and pray that the defense doesn't regress significantly. And all of this is happening while they're trying to fix an offense that's been terrible for 2 years, while they're deciding what to do with Deshaun Watson's contract, while they're preparing for the draft, and while they're trying to convince a skeptical fan base that this time, finally, things will be different. The pressure on Todd Monken just multiplied exponentially. He hasn't coached a single game, and he's already facing a crisis of confidence. He's lost a beloved coordinator, alienated key defensive players, and created a narrative that he's difficult to work with. The pressure on Jimmy Haslam is also massive. He stood in front of cameras and defended Monken, but if this decision blows up, if the defense collapses without Schwartz, if the Browns struggle in 2025, ownership will be blamed for empowering the wrong coach and allowing organizational dysfunction to continue. As of right now, the Browns are scrambling to find a replacement for Schwartz. Names are being floated, candidates are being contacted, but whoever they hire will be walking into a difficult situation, inheriting a defense that just lost its leader and a coaching staff that's already fractured. The Jim Schwartz resignation has exposed something fundamental about the Cleveland Browns. They still don't know how to win. They still make decisions that prioritize control and ego over results. They still allow personality conflicts to derail progress. And the saddest part? The defense Schwartz built was championship caliber. With Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and the talent on that side of the ball, the Browns had a foundation to compete. But now that foundation is cracked, and nobody knows if it can be repaired. Jim Schwartz's resignation has created chaos in Cleveland before the season even starts. Todd Monken's first major decision as head coach has backfired spectacularly, and the entire organization is paying the price. What happens next will determine whether the Browns can recover or whether this is the beginning of another lost season. Disclaimer: this video is based on reports from NFL insiders, leaked information from sources close to the Cleveland Browns organization, public statements from Jimmy Haslam and Todd Monken, player social media posts, and media coverage of Jim Schwartz's resignation. Internal coaching disputes, the details of private meetings, and organizational dynamics are reported based on multiple sources and should be considered ongoing developments. The full story continues to unfold as the Browns search for a new defensive coordinator.